All right. Hey, everybody. How are you doing? A little bit more of Peter Paints going on here. I have a bunch of footage here that just those stuff that I was working on, and a lot of it I guess I didn't feel like it was really good enough to put in its own videos or so I just made a little bit of a compilation here. I think I'll call this video a painting on stuff journal, something like that. You'll see. Maybe that's not what the video will be called, but at this point you will have seen already what the video is called. Well, it'll be good. Basically, I just want to, I think back to the times way earlier in my life. I'm thinking like 10 years ago. It's weird to be able to think that far back in my life, because I can remember a time in my life when I wasn't even 10 years old. But I can think back now to 10 years ago when I was in high school and I was just starting to doodle, right? And at that point in my life, I never planned on being an artist, right? If you had asked me what I wanted to do at that point in my life, I would have never said. In fact, there were never any points in my life when my goal in my life was to be an artist. I never set out to get to where I am. I just liked drawing, and I drew a lot, and I got here. But what I'm trying to say is, with doodling, with drawing, with pen and ink, I spent so much time just absent-mindedly playing with lines, playing with pen and ink, just in class while I was bored, here, there, a little bit everywhere, just putting the lines on the paper, and I had no expectations for what I was doing to become some incredible, fabulous masterpiece, something to show off and impress people with. I was just exploring the way to do things and enjoying the process of it. And when I switch mediums, it's a little bit difficult because I expect a lot of myself because I'm very comfortable with pen and ink. And I still feel like there's a lot of things to learn and improve with pen and ink, but it's such a jolt to switch mediums. And what I'm trying to do here with the paint is to just get comfortable with it, to do the painting equivalent of all those harmless, low impact, the equivalent of doodling in the margins of my notes during class that I never really mean to show anyone. The worst part of it was painful in class. And some of my best doodles were the ones I never saw again, where I was in standardized testing and they would give you a scrap piece of paper and you could draw on it. And I hardly ever did any notes on those pieces of paper, but I would finish the test quickly because I don't know if I was actually that good at school, but I was good at taking tests. I never studied or anything, but I was good at taking tests because I would try to get in the head of the test taker and figure out what they wanted me to say. Anyways, that's not about this, but I would doodle on those empty pieces of paper they gave you, but then they wouldn't let you take the drawings out. They would take them from me and then throw them away. All right, I'm getting sidetracked. What I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to do that with paint. All that early stuff I did with doodles, where it didn't matter what I did, or just doing it because I liked it, I'm trying to do it with paint. And I'm not saying these paintings aren't important, and I'm not saying I'm not trying to do good, cool things. I'm just saying that I just want to get a bunch of paintings done so that I will be able to say I've done a bunch of paintings. It's difficult to sit down and try to do a really good painting, something that I want to invest a bunch of time and effort into, when it's my first painting, practically. I feel like if I've only done 10 paintings, it still feels like my 11th one is practically my first. When I've done thousands of drawings, my 10th painting might as well be my first still. I want to do hundreds of paintings. That way, when I sit down and do another one, it feels comfortable. It feels natural. I'm not still struggling with just the way to mix paints together and the way, not just the way, if I, for example here, at one point I mixed red and white and blue together. And I thought, oh, this will look pretty. Like the colors look very pretty next to each other. But when I mixed them together, they turned into this very sludgy, muddy purple. And so it's just like little things like that. And, learning which, like brushes and palette knives and different sort of materials. And one of these canvases, I brushed over it completely. A few thick layers of gesso first, just to try to change the surface of it, to see if a different texture would help me with anything. Because I thought maybe if I got like a big canvas and made it not feel like canvas, would it feel like a big piece of paper instead if I covered it with gesso and then sanded it? I didn't have the right kind of sandpaper though. I only had 150 grit. Maybe I need like 60 grit. I don't know. The sandpaper I had was just like rubbing back and forth across it and not really doing anything to it. It wasn't really getting in there. The lower the number, the rougher the paper, right? If you have like really high number. I remember my friend who had a lathe, he would use like 12,000 grit on his paper, on his pens he would make on his lathe. And that sandpaper just felt like regular paper if you felt it. It didn't even feel like sandpaper, but I guess once you get something spinning on a lathe really fast, it really smooths it out. Also, at one point here, I painted, I don't know if this really counts as painting, but I poured Elmer's glue over my hands and smeared and spread it all over my hands and let it dry. And the first coat went pretty well, but I let the first coat dry. But then I thought, what could be more satisfying than peeling one coat of paint off my hands? Peeling 2 coats of paint off my hands, of course. So after that first coat dried, I poured even more glue over my hands, smeared that around everywhere, and tried to let that dry. But I don't know if it was because my jug of glue, I had a whole gallon of it. I don't know if this stuff was maybe like 50 degrees because I had it out in my car. Could have even been closer to 40. If it was cold, but I even had my hands, I was trying to dry them in front of a fan to speed it up, but it was not drying fast. I don't know if it was because the glue was cold or I had really smeared it on thickly or because of what. But you know how when your stuff is evaporating off of your skin, it feels cool? Well, as this glue was drying on my hands, it was excruciating. My hands felt like they were freezing, like I had them out in sub-freezing temperatures. It was very, very painful, and I tried my best to just find some weird, like Zen spot. I was like, for a while there, I was like lying on my bed, like writhing with my hands hanging out over the side, trying to like not let them touch. But after a while, it just slowly became less and less worth it to me to let my hands dry when they were in such pain. You know how it is when your hands get cold, like deep in your joints. You can feel this weird ache, and it just felt so cold. It was weird because the glue didn't feel that cold, but I guess as a combination of the cold glue covering every inch of my hands and it getting even colder from it evaporating and drying. I don't know what it was, but it was so cold. I don't know what was going on, but it was very painful. Eventually, I just peeled it off in its half-dried state. It was okay. Also, I drew on a sweatshirt here, a gray sweatshirt made by Hanes. I just bought it on Amazon. This is the second one I've drawn on, and I used a different type of fabric paint here than I used the first time. The first time I used golden acrylic paint mixed 50-50 with acrylic fabric medium, and that worked pretty good. And it felt almost exactly the same as the stuff I used here the second time, which was Jacquard textile paint. But I felt the same way about both of them, which was it felt too thick, and it just didn't go very far. Like each brush stroke, every time I loaded up the brush, I felt like I had to dip back in the paint too often, and I don't know, was the fabric too fabric-y or something. It just wasn't as satisfying as I wanted it to be, and the lines didn't come out as full and bold as I wanted. It still ended up looking pretty cool, but I really just want to find the perfect fabric paint for doing this kind of line work that I envision doing on sweatshirts. And I want to do sweatshirts because I want to, charge a certain amount for them, but also I feel weird about charging a certain amount for just like a regular t-shirt or something. But if I put a certain amount of work into it, I don't want to charge too little. Like I could, whether I'm designing a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, it takes about the same amount of time, so I might as well do it on something that is a slightly more significant piece of clothing, right? Do you guys follow me there? Anyways, do you think the best way to go is just like fabric paint pens, fabric paints? I don't know, I feel like I bought some pretty serious stuff here. Like, should I water it down some more? I'm not sure what to do. Well, I'll keep experimenting. Thankfully, people have been buying these sweatshirts as I've been drawing on them, so I can afford to keep buying more sweatshirts and paints to experiment with. And, I iron them and put them in the dryer and stuff to heat seal them or whatever it's called, so that you can wash them and it should stay. I think that's the whole point of fabric paints, is that it becomes part of the cloth, right? It's pretty good. You can go in a mud run in it and wash it nice and heartily. Heartily? Is that a word? You can wash it good, scrub away at it. It should be okay. But it's fun. Just slather some paint around anywhere and the goal here is just become more closely acquainted with and comfortable with this medium, so that when I do have ideas, the mechanics of how the paint works, isn't the thing holding me back, because I feel pretty closely acquainted with the mechanics of how a pen on paper works. Paint, not so much, but it's still really fun. Some people ask me, Peter, why don't you do any like super detailed paintings? I don't know. Sometimes the paint, especially if you don't mix the paint together all the way so you don't have like a flat color, it's kind of super detailed by itself if you're putting down like partially mixed paints. There's like the swirls and you can see the paint swirling amongst itself in the strokes on the canvas. That's kind of why I like the palette knife. Just kind of smear it all amongst itself, and you can look closely at it and see all this crazy stuff going on in there. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. That's all for me. I'm gonna go make some coffee. I just woke up, so goodbye. Goodbye. Love you. I'm here, and I'm ready to make my final confessions, my final will and testament that will stand forever, engraved in stone and marble. And I want you to know, and I want this to be recorded for history, for posterity's sake, that I don't have anything important to say, but maybe I do have an important way to say it. Slowly, soothingly, sometimes slightly melancholily.